Hotel manager kicks out humble farmer without knowing who he really was. Today, this story isn't about wealth or poverty. It's about what happens when you humiliate a stranger with dirty boots, without realizing he could buy the entire hotel just to fire you. 9 in the morning on a Monday in November in Bozeman, Montana. The thermometer read 2 degrees below zero outside. Inside the Grand Summit Hotel, the temperature was digitally controlled to exactly 72 degrees. Because rich people don't feel cold like normal people. They feel thermal discomfort. The lobby was packed. Executives in suits chatted in small groups, holding cups of coffee that cost $12 each. Billionaire investors compared wristwatches like teenagers comparing trading cards. A pianist in a tuxedo played a soft melody in the corner, his fingers gliding across the keys with the precision of someone who's been doing the same thing for 3 years without ever receiving applause. And right in the center of it all, a golden plaque informed the guests. Artisan Italian carpet. Please show respect. No one had ever disrespected that carpet. Until 7 minutes past 9. The revolving door began to move slowly, too slow for an executive, too hurried for a guest. And then, like a vision from another universe, he appeared. Michael Turner stood about 6'1", but seemed taller. Maybe it was the brown felt hat, worn at the edges and slightly crooked, as if it had survived at least 3 storms and a fight with a calf. Maybe it was the plaid flannel jacket, faded red with patches on the elbows, that he wore over a cotton shirt that had seen better days. Probably back in 1992. The leather belt had a bronze buckle with the design of a bull's head. His jeans carried stains that told stories nobody in that lobby wanted to hear. And in his back pocket, folded with care, was what appeared to be a cattle feed catalog. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the boots. They were worn leather work boots, the kind you find in rural supply stores with names like Big Jim's Ranch or Everything for the Farm. The original leather might have been brown, but now it displayed a generous layer of dried mud. Fresh mud, and something that could be mud or could be, well, better not to investigate. The left sole was partially detached and made a sucking sound with each step. Flap, flap, flap. Michael walked through the lobby with the calm of someone entering their own living room. With each step, a piece of Montana soil freed itself from his boots and found a new home on the artisan Italian carpet. Plop, plop, plop. The trail he left behind looked like a miniature road map. The silence started at the reception desk and spread like a wave. First, the blonde receptionist stopped typing. Then, the executive in the blue suit choked on his $12 coffee. Next, a lady in a fur coat pulled her small white dog onto her lap and covered the animal's eyes with her gloved hand, as if protecting a child from an inappropriate scene. The pianist missed a note, then another. On the third wrong note, he simply gave up and just stared. His fingers suspended over the keys like frozen claws. Michael didn't notice any of this. Or if he did, he didn't show it. He simply walked to the main counter, politely removed his hat, and a small piece of straw fell from inside it, floating gently down to land on the polished marble counter. The receptionist looked at the straw, then at Michael, then at the straw again. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. On the other side of the counter, partially hidden behind a stack of forms, Natalie Foster watched the scene with eyes the size of 2 chocolate chip cookies. Natalie was 28 years old, with brown hair eternally escaping from a bun she reeded at least 6 times a day, and a dimple on her chin that appeared when she was about to do something she'd regret. The dimple was appearing now. But Natalie's biggest problem wasn't the dimple, it was her mouth. Specifically, the fact that her mouth had a life of its own when she got nervous. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, her eyes fixed on Michael. "This man looks like he came straight from the pasture. Did he park a horse outside? Is there valet parking for horses? Do you tip in hay?" Her coworker next to her, a redhead named Debbie, turned her head. "What did you say?" "Me?" Natalie blinked rapidly. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was humming a song about hay. It's a new hit on country radio." Debbie frowned. "A song about hay? It's very popular in certain regions. Regions with lots of hay. You wouldn't know it. That's normal. Forget it. Go back to work, please." Natalie went back to watching Michael, now squeezing a pen so hard that her fingers were turning white. "Good afternoon. Michael said to the receptionist with a calm voice and a gentle rural accent. "I mean, good morning. Sorry, I lost track of time. I woke up at 4 to feed the animals and haven't looked at a clock since." The receptionist, whose name tag said Brittany in golden letters, remained silent. Michael took this as an invitation to continue. "My name is Michael Turner. I have a meeting scheduled at 10 with Mr. Richardson from the investment group." He smiled, and 2 teeth slightly showed, perfectly normal, but Brittany looked at them as if expecting to find hay stuck there too. "If you could check the system, I'd really appreciate it." Brittany finally found her voice. "A meeting," she repeated, as if the words were from another language. "You have a meeting here?" "Yes, ma'am, with Mr. Richardson." "That's right. Mr. Richardson, who's staying in the presidential suite." "I believe so." Brittany looked at the computer screen, then at Michael's boots, then at the mud trail that crossed the entire lobby like a miniature farm path, then at the straw on the counter. She opened her mouth to respond, and that was the exact moment when disaster entered the scene. "What is going on here?" The voice was sharp, nasal, and carried the kind of authority that only deeply insecure people can project. Gerald Whitmore, general manager of the Grand Summit Hotel, emerged from behind a marble column like a movie villain who had been waiting for the perfect dramatic moment to appear. He wore a dark gray suit, so well pressed it looked like it was made of paper. His gray hair was slicked back with so much pomade it reflected the light from the chandeliers, and his Italian shoes were so shiny you could see your own reflection in them if you had the courage to get close enough. Gerald walked to the counter, his eyes fixed on Michael like a vulture spotting lunch. He stopped 6 feet away. His nose twitched. Once, twice, 3 times. And then, slowly, theatrically, he pulled a white silk handkerchief from his suit pocket and positioned it over his nose and mouth, as if protecting himself from a contagious plague. "Sir?" The word came out muffled through the handkerchief, loaded with contempt. "May I help you find the exit?" Michael remained calm. "Good morning. Actually, I was explaining to the young lady that I have a meeting scheduled." "A meeting," Gerald repeated, his eyes narrowing above the handkerchief. He turned to the nearby executives, who were watching the scene like spectators of a slow-motion car accident. "Gentlemen, 1,000 apologies for the interruption. Apparently, we have a visitor who got lost on the way." He paused for dramatic effect. "Perhaps he's looking for the municipal barn, or the rodeo, or anywhere else that isn't this establishment." Polite laughter arose around them. One of them came from a man in a navy blue suit who laughed so hard that his $12 coffee splashed on his tie. Natalie felt her blood rise. "I can't believe this," she muttered, the pen now squeaking under the pressure of her fingers. "Was this man born this way? Or did he go to college to be insufferable? 4 years of undergraduate studies, 2 years of master's, doctoral thesis on how to humiliate people in public, diploma on the wall, golden frame. He probably also framed his certificate for most unpleasant human being in Montana." Debbie leaned in. "Natalie, you're talking to yourself again." "I know," Natalie whispered back, her face red. "It's involuntary. It's like sneezing. You don't control a sneeze. You don't control my mouth. You could try. You think I don't try? I try every day. It doesn't work. My mouth is an autonomous entity." Gerald took a step toward Michael, still holding the handkerchief over his face. "Look," he said, lowering his voice just enough to create the illusion of privacy, while ensuring that every person within 30 feet could hear. "I don't know if you're trying to pull some kind of scam, if you lost a bet, or if you simply woke up today and decided it would be fun to invade a 5-star hotel dressed like a cartoon character about farms." Michael blinked. "Cartoon character?" "But this hotel," Gerald continued, ignoring the question, "is hosting the National Agribusiness Congress. We have senators here, investors who move billions, people who actually belong in this environment, and people who bathe regularly." The entire lobby held its breath. Michael remained motionless. "Sir," he said, his voice still controlled, but with something hardening at the edges, "I took a shower this morning, at 4:30, hot water and everything." "How comforting," Gerald responded, sarcasm dripping like poisonous honey. "And the boots? Did the boots take a shower too?" Michael looked down. For the first time he seemed to notice the mud trail he had left across the lobby. His face turned red. "Oh," he said quietly, "I'm sorry about that. I can clean it up." And then, in a gesture that probably seemed like a good idea in his head, Michael raised his right foot and started scraping the boot sole on the carpet to clean it, to help. What he accomplished was spreading an impressive amount of fresh mud over an area 3 times larger than before. Gerald's left eye began to twitch. "Security," he called, his voice coming out strangled. "Security!" Natalie watched 2 men in black suits appear out of nowhere and grab Michael by the arms. She watched Gerald point to the door with a finger trembling with indignation. She watched Michael try to explain, one last time, that he had a meeting, that they just needed to check the system, that he could wait outside if they preferred. And she watched one of the executives, the one with coffee on his tie, pull his phone from his pocket and start filming, laughing. "This is going on the internet," he said to his friend next to him. "Farmer tries to enter luxury hotel. It's going to go viral." Something inside Natalie broke. "This is inhumane," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is cruel. This is everything wrong with this world. A person walks into a place asking for help and gets treated like garbage, as if clothes determined character, as if mud were a crime, as if—" "Natalie," Debbie interrupted, worried. "Are you crying?" Natalie touched her own face. Her fingers came back wet. "No," she lied, quickly wiping her cheeks. "It's allergies. To Italian carpet. It's too expensive. My eyes are anti-capitalist." Michael was led through the lobby like a criminal. His boots kept leaving marks all the way to the revolving door. At the exit, one of the security guards gave an unnecessary shove to his back. Michael stumbled, almost falling, and his felt hat flew off, landing on the wet asphalt of the sidewalk. The glass doors closed. Inside, Gerald Whitmore adjusted his tie with a satisfied smile. "Someone call housekeeping," he ordered. "And disinfectant. Lots of disinfectant." The pianist, finally recovered, went back to playing. A cheerful song, completely inappropriate. The executives resumed their conversations, already forgetting what they had seen. Outside, under Montana's gray sky, Michael Turner bent down to pick up his hat. He stayed there for a long moment, on his knees on the sidewalk, alone. And inside, watching through the glass window with her heart in pieces, Natalie Foster made a decision that would change her life forever. Her feet were already moving toward the door before her mind could stop them. Natalie's heels made a ridiculous sound against the parking lot pavement. Click, 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 click. She looked like a newborn giraffe trying to run on an ice rink, arms swinging out of control. Her bun coming undone in slow motion, and her breath coming out in white clouds that matched perfectly with the panic in her eyes. Michael was already about 100 feet from the hotel, walking toward a dust-covered red pickup truck that looked like it had crossed half the state. The felt hat, now dirty with asphalt, was back on his head. His shoulders, once upright, were slumped. He didn't look back. "Hey!" Natalie shouted, her voice coming out more squeaky than intended. "Hey, Mr. Sir Bootman, wait." Michael kept walking. "Please," she tried again, now almost tripping on a curb. "I just want— Ow, my ankle. I just want to talk to you." He stopped, turned slowly, and when his eyes met hers, Natalie realized 2 things simultaneously. First, that he had very beautiful green eyes. Second, that she had no idea what she was going to say. "You," Michael said, his voice neutral. "You're from the hotel." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and by the tone, it didn't seem like a compliment. Natalie finally caught up to him, breathless, hands on her knees. "Yes," she managed to say between breaths. "I am. From the hotel. I work there. Unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunately. It's a good job, pays the bills, but the manager is horrible. You already know that, obviously. You just met him. In a really bad way. Terrible, actually." She was rambling. Again, Michael watched her in silence, his face expressionless. "Did you come to kick me out of the parking lot, too?" "What? No." Natalie straightened up, horrified. No. I came to see if you're okay." "If I'm okay?" "Yeah." "Why?" The question was simple, but it caught Natalie off guard. "Why exactly?" "Because," she began, gesturing vaguely, "because that was horrible. What happened in there? It was inhumane and unfair and disgusting, and I just stood there watching without doing anything, which technically makes me part of the problem. And now I'm out here in the parking lot talking to a stranger instead of being at my workstation, which means I'll probably be fired in the next 20 minutes, but at least I'll be fired knowing I did the right thing." Or something like that. I'm still processing. Michael blinked. You talk a lot. I know, Natalie sighed, defeated. It's a problem. My mom says I was born talking, literally. Apparently, I came out of the womb complaining about the temperature of the delivery room. The doctor was in shock. The corner of Michael's mouth moved. It was quick, almost imperceptible. But Natalie saw it. Was that a smile? She asked, her eyes widening. You almost smiled. I saw it. Don't deny it. It wasn't a smile. Yes, it was. It was a muscle spasm. A muscle spasm that looked a lot like a smile. Michael looked away, but the tension in his shoulders seemed to decrease just a little. The cold Montana wind blew between them, making Natalie's loose hair fly in every direction. She tried to fix it, but gave up when she realized it was a losing battle. Look, she said, her voice more serious now, I know you don't know me, and I know you probably want to leave and never look at this hotel again in your life. But I needed to tell you that not everyone in there is like Gerald. Gerald? The manager, the handkerchief man, the most unpleasant human being Montana has ever produced, and the competition is tough. Michael let out a sound that could have been an aborted laugh. He seemed pretty proud of the handkerchief. He's proud of everything, Natalie rolled her eyes. The handkerchief, the suit, the slicked back hair, the collection of imported pens he keeps in his drawer like sacred relics. Last week he scolded an employee because the guy sneezed near the decorative plant in his office. Sneezed? Sneezed. In the wrong direction, apparently. The plant was traumatized. This time Michael smiled for real, and when he smiled, Natalie understood why she had run after him. It wasn't just guilt, it was something more. I came for a real meeting, Michael said suddenly, his voice lower. I know it doesn't look like it. I know how I'm dressed, but I had an appointment with Richardson. Everything was scheduled. Natalie nodded. I believe you. He raised his eyes, surprised. You do? I do, she confirmed. You don't have the face of a con man. And con men have a face? They do, Natalie said with conviction. Con men have the face of used car salesmen. You have the face of, she paused, studying his face, of someone who wakes up at 4 in the morning to take care of animals and doesn't complain about it. Michael was silent for a moment. The wind blew again. 4:30, he said finally. What? I wake up at 4:30, not 4. Natalie smiled. Sorry, half an hour makes a difference. It makes a big difference. In those 30 minutes I can have a coffee. Sometimes I even get to sit down while drinking it. Luxury. Total luxury. They looked at each other, and something changed in the air. I need to go, Michael said, breaking the moment. I need to find another place to stay, sort some things out. Will you come back? Natalie asked before she could stop herself. To the city, I mean, for the meeting. Michael put his hands in his pockets. I don't know yet. Because if you come back, she continued, nervous, I work at the hotel until 6. I mean, if I still have a job when I get back there, which is questionable. But if I do, and if you come back, and if you need anything, or someone who talks too much to distract you from your problems, I can help. Maybe. She was blushing. She felt her face burning. Michael watched her for a long moment. Natalie, he said. How do you know my name? It's on your badge. She looked down. Of course it was. Oh, yes, that makes sense. Continue. Thank you, he said simply, for coming after me. And with that, he turned and walked to the pickup truck. Natalie stood in the parking lot, her heart beating too fast, watching him leave. The pickup started with a tired rumble. She waved. He waved back through the mirror. And Natalie stood there, smiling like a fool, until she realized she was standing alone in a parking lot, waving at no one. You're pathetic, she said to herself, completely pathetic. But when she turned to go back to the hotel, she noticed something that instantly froze her smile. Gerald Whitmore was standing at the glass door of the lobby, watching, with arms crossed. Gerald Whitmore didn't blink once during the 47 seconds it took Natalie to walk from the parking lot to the hotel door. She counted. Every second, every step, every accelerated beat of her own heart as she approached that gray suit and that look that could freeze $12 coffee from a distance. Miss Foster, Gerald said when she finally got close enough. How interesting to find you out here, in the parking lot, talking to strangers during work hours. Natalie swallowed hard. I can explain. Can you? I can. Definitely. Absolutely. She paused, Just give me a second to come up with the explanation. Gerald's left eye twitched. 10 minutes later, Natalie was sitting in the manager's office, sunk into an uncomfortable chair that had probably been designed specifically to make employees feel small. Gerald paced back and forth behind the desk, hands clasped behind his back, like a general about to order an execution. Abandonment of post, he said, counting on his fingers. Insubordination. Fraternization with unauthorized individuals. Professional misconduct. Fraternization? Natalie repeated, incredulous. I just asked if he was okay. You ran after him, in the parking lot, in high heels. Technically, it was more stumbling than running. Gerald stopped pacing. Is this funny to you, Miss Foster? No, sir. Because I'm not laughing. I noticed, sir, you never laugh. I've worked here for 2 years, and I've never seen you or smile, or show any emotion other than contempt or mild irritation. Sometimes I wonder if you're actually a very well-built robot. The words came out before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Natalie closed her eyes. I said that out loud, didn't I? You did? All of it? Every word? She sighed. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Gerald dismissed her with a formal warning and the promise that one more infraction would result in immediate termination. Natalie left the office with wobbly legs and the certainty that she had just used at least 3 of her 9 professional lives. She walked down the hallway toward her desk, muttering quietly. Well-built robot. I called my boss a robot, to his face, during a reprimand. Who does that? What kind of person does that? A person who wants to be fired, that's who does that. A cleaning staff member passed by and waved. Natalie waved back without stopping her talking. And now, I'm going to have to work here, knowing he hates me more than he already did, which I didn't even know was possible, because his level of hatred was already pretty high to begin with. She turned the corner and almost collided with Debbie, who was standing there with an alarmed expression. Natalie, the redhead whispered, pulling her aside. You need to see something. If it's more bad news, I swear I'm going to start crying right here. Just come. Debbie dragged her to the systems room, where one of the IT technicians, a skinny young guy named Trevor who lived on energy drinks and sarcasm, was typing furiously. Show her, Debbie said. Trevor spun his chair around and pointed at the computer screen. You know that guy who was kicked out this morning? The cowboy with the muddy boots? Yeah, Natalie said, her stomach sinking. What about him? Gerald had his name blocked. Blocked how? Trevor clicked a few times and a window opened. Look here. Michael Turner, blocked in the central system of the entire network. That's 12 hotels in 4 states. The guy can't book a room in any of them. And look at the reason Gerald put. Natalie leaned in to read. Attempted fraud. Suspicious behavior. Possible con artist. The air left her lungs as if she had been punched. That's a lie, she said, her voice faltering. He didn't do any of that. I know, Trevor agreed. But Gerald is the manager. He has the authority to do this. And there's more. More? He sent an email to all the hotels in the region that aren't part of the network, the independent ones, warning them about the con artist and recommending they don't accept reservations from him. Debbie put her hand on Natalie's shoulder. This man basically erased the farmer from the city. Natalie stood there, staring at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness that made her hands shake. Where is he going to stay? She whispered. If no hotel will take him, during the Congress, where is he going to sleep? Trevor shrugged. His problem, I guess. Natalie turned to him with a look that could melt steel. His problem? His problem? Easy, Trevor raised his hand, startled. I just meant. An innocent man was humiliated in public, falsely accused of a crime, and now he can't even rent a room to sleep in, and you say it's his problem. Natalie, Debbie tried to intervene. Breathe. I am breathing. I'm breathing a lot. I'm hyperventilating, actually. She leaned on the desk, trying to calm down. Michael's face came to her mind. The almost imperceptible smile. The way he said thank you in the parking lot. And she just stood there, frozen, doing nothing. Again, at 6:15 in the evening, Natalie's shift ended. She grabbed her purse, her coat, and left the hotel without looking back. Montana's sky was darkening, and the wind cut across her face with that coldness only November can deliver. Natalie got into her car, a 10-year-old sedan that made worrying noises on curves, and sat there for a moment, Hands on the steering wheel. She didn't have to do anything. It wasn't her responsibility. She barely knew the man. But the image of him, kneeling on the asphalt, picking up his hat from the ground, wouldn't leave her head. "You're an idiot," she said to the rearview mirror. "A complete and absolute idiot." And then she started the car and began driving out of the city. 30 minutes later, Natalie spotted the sign. Starry Sky Inn, rooms starting at $45. It was a single-story wooden building, with peeling paint and a neon sign where 2 letters were burned out. It looked like the kind of place where people went when they had nowhere else to go. In the parking lot, a dust-covered red pickup truck. Natalie's heart raced. She parked next to it, turned off the engine, and stared at the door of room number 7. The light was on. He was there. Now what? What was she going to say? "Hi, I found out my boss destroyed your life, came to apologize." "Hello again, I'm the crazy woman who chases strangers in parking lots." Before she could decide, the room door opened. Michael appeared in the doorway, holding a coffee mug. His eyes met hers through the windshield. For a long moment, nobody moved. And then he smiled, a real smile this time, and said, "Did you follow me here?" The question hung suspended in the icy Montana night air while Natalie remained paralyzed inside the car, her hands still gripping the steering wheel as if it were a life preserver. Michael was leaning against the doorframe of room 7, the coffee mug steaming in his hands, and there was something in his gaze she couldn't decipher. Surprise? Amusement? A dangerous mix of both? Natalie opened the car door, closed it, opened it again, stumbled out. "Follow is a strong word," she said, nervously fixing her hair. "I prefer accidental tracking, with noble intentions, based on information obtained in a questionable manner." Accidental tracking, exactly, with noble intentions, purely noble, almost heroic, I'd say. Michael took a sip of coffee, hiding what appeared to be a smile. "And how exactly did you find me here?" Natalie bit her lip. "Do you really want to know?" "I do. I kind of hacked the hotel system. I mean, not me personally. Trevor hacked it. I just stood beside him looking guilty." "And the hotel system had the address of this inn?" "No, but it had the list of all the places where you were blocked. And I thought, if he can't stay at any hotel in the city, where would he go? So I searched for cheap inns on the highway and," she gestured vaguely, "here I am, like a stalker. A well-intentioned stalker." Michael watched her for a long moment, and then he laughed. A real laugh coming from deep inside that completely transformed his face. "You're the strangest person I've ever met," he said. "Thank you, I think." The following days created a routine that neither of them planned. Natalie showed up at the inn every night after 6, when her shift at the hotel ended. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she brought gossip from work. She always brought too many words. On the 4th visit, the owner of Starry Sky Inn, a 63-year-old woman named Marge, who wore glasses with a gold chain and had an opinion about absolutely everything, stopped Natalie at the reception desk with a mischievous smile. "Visit for room 7 again, dear?" "Yeah," Natalie replied, trying to seem casual. "We're friends." "Friends. That's right, who visit each other every day after 6 in the evening. Dedicated friends." Marge adjusted her glasses and studied her over the lenses. "Dear, I'm 63 years old and have 3 ex-husbands. I know exactly what kind of friendship this is." Natalie felt her face catch fire. "It's not what you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything," Marge said, handing over a spare tea. "But if I were, I'd think you two make a beautiful couple. He's polite, you're crazy. It works." That night, Natalie found Michael sitting on the tiny porch of his room, looking at the stars. She sat beside him on the wooden bench that creaked with every movement. "Marge thinks we're dating," she said, without a filter as always. Michael choked on his coffee. "What?" "Yeah, apparently my dedication to friendship looks like romance to outsiders. Who knew? I only come here every day, bring food, laugh at your jokes, and think about you during my entire shift. Totally normal between friends." She paused, processed what she had just said. "Oh no," she groaned, covering her face with her hands. "I said that out loud." "You did. All of it?" "Every word, including the part about thinking about me during your shift." "Fantastic. Wonderful. I'm gonna move to Alaska now. It was nice knowing you." She made a move to get up, but Michael gently held her wrist. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "Stay." Natalie sat back down, her heart racing. Just for the record, she muttered, that wasn't a declaration. It was an involuntary verbal leak. Understood. I have a medical condition. Clearly. I've considered wearing a muzzle. That would be a shame, Michael said, his eyes meeting hers. I like hearing you talk. The world stopped for a second. Natalie forgot how to breathe. They spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. Natalie talked about her family in Oregon, about her dream of one day opening her own inn, about how she ended up working at a luxury hotel that represented everything she despised. And you? She finally asked. Tell me about your life. About the farm, about anything. Michael's expression changed. A shadow crossed his eyes. There's not much to tell, he said, looking away toward the stars. Of course there is. Everyone has a story. Mine is complicated. I love complicated. Michael was silent for so long that Natalie thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant. I spent my whole life trying to prove I'm more than people think, more than the first impression, more than, he hesitated, more than the name I carry. Natalie frowned. What's wrong with your name? He looked at her, and for a moment it seemed like he was going to say something important, something big. But then he closed off his expression and forced a smile. Nothing. Forget it. It's silly. Michael? It's getting late, he said, standing up. You should go. If someone from the hotel sees your car here. The change was so abrupt that Natalie felt it like a bucket of cold water. Okay, she said, trying to hide her disappointment. I'll come back tomorrow. Natalie, he called when she was already in the car. She looked through the window. Thank you, he said, for being here, even without understanding everything. She nodded, started the engine, and drove home with more questions than answers. The next morning, while Natalie organized documents at the Grand Summit reception, Debbie came running with her phone in hand. You need to see this, the redhead whispered, dragging her to a corner. What now? I was researching cattle farms in Montana, curiosity, and look what I found. She showed the screen. It was a photo from an agribusiness magazine. On the cover, a man in a suit next to an older man. The older one was identified as William Turner, owner of the largest cattle empire in the United States. The younger one had green eyes, a firm jawline, and a face Natalie knew very well. The caption read, William Turner and his son Michael, heir to the Turner Cattle Co. empire. The phone almost slipped from Natalie's hands. This can't be true, she whispered. But deep down, suddenly, everything made terrible sense. The photo wouldn't leave Natalie's head. She spent the whole day on autopilot, smiling at guests, typing forms, answering questions, while her brain repeated the same image on loop. Michael in a suit next to a billionaire, with the caption, heir to the Turner Cattle Co. empire. It couldn't be him. Could it? Natalie, Debbie snapped her fingers in front of her face. You've been staring at the same paper for 20 minutes. It's a laundry form. I know, Natalie murmured. It's very interesting. Look how many towels room 402 uses. Fascinating. Are you having a nervous breakdown? Possibly. At 6:15, Natalie was at the inn. This time, instead of knocking on the door of room 7, she stood in the parking lot, rehearsing what she was going to say. So, Michael, she practiced quietly. Quick question. Are you secretly a billionaire? Not that it changes anything. I mean, it changes everything. But I'm trying to seem casual. She shook her head. Terrible. Awful. 0 stars. She tried again. Hey, Michael, I saw a photo of you in a magazine. You were wearing a suit, very elegant. You look like another person. Literally another person. Because you told me you were a farmer, and farmers don't appear in business magazines unless they're very, very special farmers. Even worse. You know what? She said to herself. I'm going to go in there and just observe. Ask subtle questions, like a spy. A very bad spy who can't stop talking, but still a spy. The room door opened. Michael appeared with a raised eyebrow. You've been talking to yourself in the parking lot for 5 minutes, he said. I heard everything through the window. Natalie wished the ground would open up and swallow her. Everything, including the spy part. Wonderful, just wonderful. She walked into the room trying to seem normal, which was impossible, considering normal was never her strong suit. Michael had spread papers across the small wooden table. Documents, charts, numbers, lots of numbers. The kind of numbers humble farmers definitely don't analyze in a $45 a night inn. What's this? Natalie asked, pointing at the table. Work. What kind of work? The boring kind. She approached, pretending disinterest, and her eyes caught a few words. Market projection, feasibility analysis, return on investment. This seems, she began slowly, very sophisticated for someone who wakes up at 4 to feed cows. 4:30, Michael corrected, quickly gathering the papers. And cows are serious business, so serious it involves feasibility analysis? You'd be surprised. I'm already surprised, Michael. Very surprised. Surprised is my natural state since I met you. He put the documents in a folder and closed it with a definitive click. It's just paperwork, he said, without looking at her. Farm stuff. Natalie crossed her arms. You're lying. I'm not. Yes, you are. You do a thing with the corner of your mouth when you lie. A little twitch. Almost imperceptible. But I'm extremely observant when I want to be. You've known me for a week. A very intense week. Silence settled between them like an unwanted third guest. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, running his hand over his face with exhaustion. For a moment, he seemed older, heavier, as if he were carrying something invisible on his shoulders. Natalie sat in the chair across from him. Tell me, she asked, her voice softer now. Whatever it is, I can handle it. You wouldn't understand. Try. Natalie? I ran after you in a parking lot in high heels. I drove 30 minutes every night to an inn on the highway. I called my boss a robot to his face because of you. I think I deserve at least a piece of the truth. Michael looked at her, and something in his eyes wavered. What if the truth changes everything? He asked quietly. What if it doesn't? It always does. The pain in his voice was real, palpable. The kind of pain that comes from experience, not assumption. Natalie leaned forward. Michael, who are you really? He opened his mouth to answer, and his phone rang. The ringtone was loud, insistent, impossible to ignore. Michael looked at the screen, and his face hardened. I need to answer this, he said, standing up. No? It's important. He went to the porch and closed the glass door behind him. Natalie could see him through the glass, pacing back and forth, gesturing, clearly arguing with someone. She couldn't hear the words, but she caught fragments. That's not how it works. I know what I'm doing. Trust me, Dad. Dad. Natalie felt her heart race. She looked at the folder of documents Michael had left on the dresser. It was closed but not locked. Don't do this, she whispered to herself. Don't be that person. Respect his privacy. Be an adult. Her feet carried her to the dresser. Natalie, no, she continued, murmuring. This is wrong. This is invasion. This is... Her hand opened the folder. Exactly what a terrible person would do. Congratulations, you're officially terrible. But it was too late. Her eyes were already scanning the documents, and what she saw made her legs go weak. Acquisition contracts, purchase proposals, and on top of everything, a letterhead with a logo she knew very well. Grand Summit Hotel, majority acquisition proposal. The listed buyer, Turner Cattle Co. Authorized representative, Michael J. Turner. The porch door opened. Natalie looked up, the documents still in her hands, and found Michael standing in the doorway, his face pale. For a long and terrible moment, nobody said anything. And then Michael sighed. I can explain. Michael's words hung in the air like barbecue smoke, present but impossible to grasp. Natalie still held the documents, her fingers trembling slightly, her brain trying to process too much information at once. You, she began slowly, are buying the hotel where I work. Technically, my family is buying it. The hotel where I work? Yes. The hotel whose manager kicked you out. That's the one. The hotel that publicly humiliated you. Natalie? The hotel that blocked you across the entire network. If you'd let me explain. That hotel? Michael sighed. That hotel. Natalie dropped the papers on the dresser and started pacing in circles around the tiny room, her hands gesturing frantically. So let me see if I understand. You're a billionaire, heir to an empire, and you came disguised as a humble farmer to what? Test the service? Rate them on the app? Write a very detailed review. To evaluate business partners, Michael said calmly. Before closing any deal, I visit personally, without fanfare, without notice, to see how people really are when they think no one important is watching. Natalie stopped pacing. And how was Gerald? Michael let out a bitter laugh. What do you think? They talked for another hour that night. Michael explained everything. The luxury farm hotel project his family wanted to launch across the American countryside, the partnership with the Grand Summit Network, and how the visit to Bozeman was part of the evaluation process. "I was going to reveal my identity at the meeting with Richardson," he said. "But I never got there. Because Gerald kicked you out first. Because of the boots. The famous boots." "They're comfortable," Michael shrugged, "and authentic." Natalie shook her head, still processing. "And now, what are you going to do?" "Keep observing. The Congress ends in 3 days. My father arrives on the last day for the official purchase announcement. Until then, I stay in the shadows." "In the shadows," Natalie repeated. "In a $45 inn, eating gas station food." "I like gas station food." "You're very strange for a billionaire." "Thank you." The next morning, Natalie arrived at work with her head still spinning. She could barely look at the walls of the Grand Summit without thinking that soon they would belong to the family of the man she was secretly visiting every night. The irony was almost poetic. "You look weird," Debbie commented when she passed by reception. "I always look weird. Weirder than normal." "Thank you, Debbie. Always a pleasure talking to you." Natalie went to the document room to organize files. A tedious task she normally hated, but that today felt like a refuge. At least papers didn't ask questions about her inexplicably complicated love life. She was sorting invoices when she heard voices in the hallway. Familiar voices, voices that made her stomach churn. "I'm absolutely certain," Gerald's voice echoed. "The farmer is still in the city. My contacts confirmed it." Natalie froze. "And where is he staying?" A second voice asked. Male. Authoritative. An inn on the highway. Starry sky. A dump. "And what's the plan?" Natalie moved closer to the partially open door, her heart pounding. "I've already prepared everything," Gerald said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Congress organizers. Attempted fraud, identity falsification, trespassing on private property. Will that hold up?" "It doesn't need to hold up forever. It just needs to hold up for 3 days. Long enough for him to be detained, investigated, and permanently removed from the city. By the time they find out it's all nonsense, the Congress will be over and I'll be clean." Natalie covered her mouth to stay quiet. "And the employee?" the second voice asked. "The one who ran after him? Foster? She's harmless. A romantic fool who talks to herself. I'll fire her at the next opportunity for any made-up reason." Problem solved. The footsteps began to fade away. Natalie stood motionless, her back against the wall, breathing in silence. "Don't freak out," she whispered to herself. "Don't freak out. Don't freak out. You're a functional adult. Functional adults don't freak out." Her hands were shaking. "Okay, maybe a small freak out. A controlled freak out. A tiny freak out." She peeked down the hallway. Empty. "Think, Natalie. Think. Gerald is going to have Michael arrested. Michael who is secretly a billionaire. Michael who is buying the hotel. Michael who you—" She paused. "Like a lot. As a friend who visits every day and thinks about him constantly. Normal friend." She left the document room walking fast, muttering, "I need to warn him, but how? If I call from the hotel, they can trace it. If I leave now, they'll notice. If I text, it could be intercepted. Do billionaires have their messages intercepted? They probably do. They probably have a whole team just to intercept messages." A cleaning staff member passed by and looked at her strangely. "Hi, Carmen," Natalie said, forcing a smile. "Just rehearsing a play. I'm part of an amateur group. Very amateur. Super amateur." Carmen waved suspiciously and kept walking. At 5:55, Natalie invented a stomachache and left early. At 6:20, she was in the parking lot of the Starry Sky Inn, knocking on the door of room 7 as if her life depended on it. Michael opened, looking sleepy. "Natalie? What?" "Put on some clothes," she fired off, pushing him inside. "Gerald knows you're here. He's going to report you for fraud. The police could show up any minute. You need to leave now." Michael blinked, processing. "Wait, how did he find out?" "I don't know. Contacts? Spies? Maybe a malicious carrier pigeon. Does it matter now?" "Natalie, calm down." "Calm down?" she almost shouted. "You could be arrested, Michael. Actually arrested, with handcuffs and a front photo and a side photo and a number under your chin." He held her shoulders. "Hey, look at me." She looked. "I'm not going to be arrested," he said firmly. "I didn't do anything wrong. Innocence never stopped anyone from spending a night in jail." "You have a point." Outside, the sound of an engine approaching. They both froze. Natalie ran to the window and peeked through the curtain. A sheriff's cruiser was pulling into the inn's parking lot. "Michael," she whispered, panic evident in her voice. He was already grabbing the document folder. "Is there a back exit?" "I don't know. It's the first time I've needed to escape from an inn." Knocking at the door. Loud. Official. "County Sheriff, open the door." Natalie looked at Michael. Michael looked at Natalie. And the only thing she could say was, "I really hope billionaires have good lawyers." The knocking at the door continued. Loud. Insistent. The kind of knocking that doesn't accept "come back later" as an answer. "County Sheriff, last chance before we break down the door." Michael looked at Natalie. Natalie looked at Michael. And then, before she could stop him, he walked to the door and opened it. On the other side were two officers with unfriendly faces and a paper in hand. "Michael Turner?" the taller one asked. "That's me. You are being summoned to appear at the station for questioning regarding a formal complaint of fraud and identity falsification. You can come voluntarily, or we can do this the hard way." Michael raised his hands in a sign of peace. "Voluntarily is great. I love doing things the easy way." Natalie watched, paralyzed, as he grabbed his coat and walked toward the cruiser. At the door, he turned and looked at her. "Everything's going to be fine," he said. "Don't do anything crazy." And then the cruiser door closed, and he was gone. Natalie stood in the empty room for exactly 13 seconds. On the 14th second, something inside her snapped. "Don't do anything crazy," she repeated, her voice rising. "Don't do anything crazy? He was taken by the police because of a lie, and I shouldn't do anything crazy." She grabbed her purse, grabbed her keys, grabbed her coat. "I'm going to do something extremely crazy. Maybe the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. And the competition is tough." Marge appeared at the room door, drawn by the commotion. "Dear, what happened? Did the police take your boyfriend?" "He's not my boyfriend, but you want him to be." "That's not relevant right now, Marge." Natalie rushed past the woman like a hurricane and got into her car. The engine coughed 3 times before starting. "Typical. Come on, old tin can," she muttered, accelerating. "Today is not the day to abandon me." 25 minutes later, Natalie parked haphazardly in front of the Grand Summit Hotel. It was almost 8 at night, but the lobby was still buzzing with activity. The agribusiness congress was in full swing, with investors and executives moving around like ants in Italian suits. She walked through the revolving doors with determined steps, ignoring the curious looks. Her hair was a disaster. Her coat was crooked, and she probably looked like someone who had just witnessed an unjust arrest, because that was exactly the case. "Miss Foster?" Brittany called from the reception desk. "Didn't you leave early? You said you were feeling sick. Where's Gerald?" "In his office." "But—" Natalie was already walking. "Miss Foster, you can't just—" But she could. And she was doing it. The door to Gerald's office was closed, but that had never stopped Natalie before. She pushed the handle and walked in without knocking. Gerald was sitting behind his polished mahogany desk, phone to his ear, an expression of absolute satisfaction on his face. When he saw Natalie, his eyebrows rose. "I'll have to call you back," he said, hanging up. "Miss Foster, what an unpleasant surprise. I thought you were sick. Stomachache, wasn't it?" "It passed. Miracle of modern medicine." "And what brings you to my office at 8 at night, without authorization, without knocking, and looking like you slept in a barn?" Natalie took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. Her legs were shaking. Even her voice shook when she started speaking. "I know what you did." Gerald leaned back in his chair, crossing his hands over his chest. "And what did I do, exactly?" "You reported Michael for fraud, a made-up fraud, just because he embarrassed you by existing." "I don't know what you're talking about. I heard your conversation in the hallway, all of it, including the part about firing me for a made-up reason." Something flickered in Gerald's gaze. Surprise, concern, and then, quickly, contempt. "You heard wrong. I heard perfectly." "Miss Foster," Gerald said, slowly standing up, "you are making very serious accusations. Accusations that could have serious consequences for your career, which, by the way, is already hanging by a thread." "I don't care. You should care. And you should care about the fact that you're persecuting an innocent man. But apparently neither of us is being very rational tonight." Gerald walked around the desk, approaching her with that intimidating posture that worked on all the employees. But Natalie didn't back down. "You're risking everything," he said quietly. For a farmer you met a week ago? I'm risking everything for doing the right thing. The right thing, Gerald laughed. How touching, how naive, how profoundly stupid. Maybe it's stupid, but at least I'll sleep in peace. You'll sleep unemployed. Then I'll sleep unemployed and in peace, 2 for the price of 1. Gerald studied her for a long moment, cold eyes calculating options. You know what I think, Miss Foster? I think you're in love with that country bumpkin, and you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. My emotions are perfectly clear. So you admit you're in love. Natalie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's not, I didn't say. You're changing the subject. I'm merely observing the facts. The facts are that you committed false reporting, which is a federal crime. I looked it up on my way here. You researched federal laws while driving? I'm excellent at multitasking. Gerald shook his head, almost impressed. You're braver than I thought, or more foolish, probably both. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant to be. I know, but I'm accepting it anyway. Silence stretched between them. Gerald walked back behind the desk and sat down with a theatrical sigh. All right, Miss Foster, you put on your little show. You felt heroic for 5 minutes. Now you can leave before I call security to escort you out. I'm not leaving until you withdraw the complaint. That's not going to happen. Then I'm going to the press. Gerald froze. What? I'm going to tell everything, to every journalist covering the Congress. I'll tell them how the manager of the Grand Summit Hotel kicked out a guest because of prejudice, blocked his name across the entire network, and then falsely reported him to the police. She took a step forward. You know how fast this kind of story goes viral? Very fast. Very ugly. For the first time, something that looked like fear crossed Gerald's face. You wouldn't have the courage. Try me. Natalie's phone beeped. A message from an unknown number. She looked at the screen and felt the world spin. Natalie, it's me. They released me. My dad arrived early. Come to the hotel lobby now. Something's going to happen that you need to see. She looked up at Gerald with a smile she couldn't contain. Looks like your plans just changed. Natalie left Gerald's office with her heart racing and her phone still in her hand. The message glowed on the screen like a beacon. Come to the hotel lobby now. She crossed the hallway almost running, ignoring the confused looks from the employees, ignoring Brittany calling her name, ignoring absolutely everything except getting to the lobby as fast as possible. And when she arrived, she stopped so abruptly she almost fell. Michael was there, in a suit. It wasn't just any suit. It was the kind of suit that cost more than Natalie's car. Maybe more than 2 of her cars. The fabric was dark, perfectly tailored, and he wore a navy blue tie that matched his green eyes in a way that should be illegal. Next to him was an older man, gray hair, imposing posture, the same firm jawline. The father, William Turner, the billionaire. And around them, a small crowd of executives, investors, and journalists gathered, all with expressions ranging from curiosity to absolute shock. Natalie stood frozen at the entrance of the lobby. What? She started muttering. How, when, he was at the station? And now he's in a suit, and the father, and the journalists, and… Debbie appeared beside her, coming from nowhere. You're talking to yourself again? I know, Debbie. Just letting you know. Thank you. Michael saw her. His eyes met hers across the sea of people, and something in his expression changed, became softer, more vulnerable. He said something to his father, who nodded and then started walking toward her. The crowd parted like the Red Sea for Moses. If Moses wore an Italian suit and had just gotten out of a police station. Natalie, he said when he got close. You're wearing a suit. I am. A real suit. Yes, you were in jail 40 minutes ago. Technically, it was an interrogation room. I never actually saw a cell. Is that relevant? Probably not. Natalie looked at him, then at his father, then at the journalists, then at him again. Michael, she said slowly, what's happening? He took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. Another thing? Besides being a billionaire? Besides buying the hotel? Besides being arrested and released the same day? There's more? There is. Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be? At this point, you're going to tell me you're also a secret astronaut, or a prince of a small country, or both. I'm not an astronaut or a prince. What a relief. Finally, a limit. Michael guided her to a more private corner of the lobby, away from curious eyes. His hands found hers, and Natalie noticed he was trembling slightly. The billionaire in the Italian suit was trembling. "The farm hotel project," he began. "It's not just any investment. It's my dream, something I've been planning for years." "Farm hotels," Natalie repeated. "Luxury resorts in the countryside. Places where people can experience real rural life but with comfort. Wake up early, care for animals, ride horses, watch the sunset over the fields, and at night, gourmet dinner and sleep in 1,000 thread-count beds. That sounds amazing." "It does?" "It does. I always dreamed of having an inn like that, something small, cozy, connected with nature." Michael's eyes lit up. "I know. You know? You told me, that night on the porch of the inn, you said you wanted to open your own place someday." Natalie blinked, surprised he remembered. "And the part about coming in disguise?" she asked, "wearing dirty boots and farmer's clothes?" "It wasn't a disguise," Michael said. "It was me being me. The version of me that exists when nobody knows about the money. When people treat me for who I am, not what I have. And how do people treat you when they know? Different. Always different. They smile more, agree more, laugh at my jokes even when they're not funny." He paused. "Did you laugh at my bad jokes?" "No, your jokes were genuinely terrible." "Thank you. That means a lot." Natalie was silent for a moment, processing everything. "So let me see if I understand," she said finally, hands gesturing. "You're the heir to a billion-dollar empire. You came to Bozeman to evaluate business partners disguised as an ordinary farmer. You were humiliated by Gerald, blocked at every hotel, falsely reported, taken by the police, and during all that time, you could have simply said who you were and ended everything in 5 seconds. I could have, but you didn't." "No. Why?" Michael looked into her eyes. "Because for the first time in years, someone saw me for real, without the money, without the last name, without the expectations." He squeezed her hands. "You ran after me in a parking lot, Natalie, in high heels, without knowing anything about me except that I had been humiliated. Technically, I stumbled more than ran." Still, her eyes began to sting. "You lied to me," she said, her voice breaking. "I opened up to you. I told you about my dreams, my frustrations, my family, and you just sat there, listening, knowing you were hiding something huge. I know. I felt special. I thought I had a real connection with a simple farmer who understood my world. But you're not simple. You're literally the opposite of simple." "Natalie, I'm a hotel employee making $15 an hour. You probably make that per second." "I don't make $15 per second." "How much do you make per second?" Michael hesitated. "Maybe it's better not to answer that right now." "Yeah, maybe so." She stepped away from him, crossing her arms, trying to organize the hurricane of emotions inside her chest. "I don't know what to feel," she admitted. "Part of me is furious, another part understands, and a third part, which clearly needs therapy, still wants to hug you. You can do all 3 things, not necessarily in that order." "That's not funny." "A little bit it is. It's not. The corner of your mouth is moving. That's a nervous spasm. Looks like a smile. It's a spasm that looks like a smile. Rare medical condition." Michael took a step toward her. "Natalie, I'm going to make the official reveal in a little while. To everyone. To Gerald. To the investors. To the press." He extended his hand. "I want you to be by my side when it happens. Why? Because you're the only person in this city who treated me like a human being. And because—" he hesitated, "because I want you to be part of what comes next." Natalie's heart leaped. "What comes next?" Before he could answer, William Turner's voice echoed through the lobby. "Michael, it's time." The journalists began positioning themselves. Camera flashes went off, and Gerald Whitmore appeared at the edge of the crowd. He still didn't know what was about to happen. But Natalie knew. And for the first time that night, she smiled for real. Gerald Whitmore was smiling when he entered the lobby. It was the smile of a man who thought he had won. The smile of someone who had sent a rival to the police station and was now returning to reap the rewards of victory. The smile that, in approximately 3 minutes, would be completely destroyed. Natalie watched from afar as he adjusted his tie and walked toward the group of journalists, probably planning to position himself in the photos as the exemplary manager of the Grand Summit Hotel. "He has no idea," she murmured to herself. "No idea. 0, less than 0, negative idea." Debbie appeared beside her, chewing a granola bar. What's happening? Why are there so many people in the lobby? And why does Gerald have that face like he won the lottery? Because he thinks he won the lottery. And he didn't. Debbie, Natalie said, turning to her friend, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound crazy, but I need you to trust me, okay? The farmer with the dirty boots is a billionaire. Debbie stopped chewing. What? And he's right there, in a suit, next to his father, who is also a billionaire, and they're about to buy this hotel. Debbie looked where Natalie was pointing, looked at Michael, looked at William Turner, looked at the journalists, and then she spit out a piece of granola bar onto her own uniform. That's the guy with the boots. That's the guy with the boots. The guy Gerald said smelled like a barn? The same. The guy who was kicked out in front of everyone? Exactly. Debbie started laughing, quietly at first, then louder, until she was holding her stomach with tears in her eyes. This is the best thing that's ever happened at this hotel. William Turner stepped onto a small makeshift stage that the events team had set up hastily. The journalists raised their cameras, the investors moved closer, and Gerald, still smiling, positioned himself strategically near the front, probably mentally rehearsing his thank you speech. Good evening, everyone, William began, his voice deep and authoritative. Thank you all for being here for this historic announcement. Gerald straightened his posture. As many of you know, Turner Cattle Company is the largest cattle producer in the United States. But few know that 3 years ago, we began an ambitious project to create a network of luxury farm hotels across the American countryside. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Today, I have the pleasure of announcing that the Grand Summit Hotel will be the first official partner in this project. Turner Cattle Company is acquiring majority ownership in this establishment. Polite applause. Gerald clapped louder than everyone else, his smile now taking up half his face. And to speak more about this project, William continued, I'd like to call to the stage my son and heir, Michael Turner. The silence that followed was absolute. Gerald stopped clapping. His right hand hung suspended in the air, frozen mid-clap. Michael stepped onto the stage, elegant in his dark suit, and positioned himself next to his father. His eyes swept the crowd until they found Gerald. And then he smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was worse. It was a polite smile. Thank you, Dad, Michael said into the microphone. Before talking about the project, I'd like to share a personal experience. Gerald started to sweat. A week ago, I visited this hotel. Without notice, without identifying myself, I wanted to see how we were treated when nobody knew who we were. He paused dramatically. I was wearing my work clothes, jeans, flannel, felt hat, and boots. Someone in the crowd coughed. Boots that, I admit, were a little dirty. Maybe very dirty. I had just come from a farm after all. Nervous laughter. And when I entered this lobby, I was received in an interesting way. Gerald was now the color of skim milk. Natalie could see the drops of sweat glistening on his forehead even from a distance. I was called. Michael consulted a paper he pulled from his pocket. A visitor lost on the way to the barn. I was accused of trying to pull a scam. I was removed by security in front of dozens of people, and later I discovered that my name had been blocked across the entire hotel network and that a false fraud complaint had been filed against me. The silence was now deadly. All eyes turned to Gerald, who appeared to be seriously considering the possibility of fainting. I don't tell this to humiliate anyone, Michael continued, though the tone suggested perhaps a small humiliation was intentional. I tell it because it illustrates exactly the kind of culture we do not want in our farm hotel network. William Turner nodded gravely. Our project is about genuine hospitality, about treating all people with dignity, regardless of how they're dressed or how much money they appear to have. Michael looked directly at Gerald, and about holding accountable those who fail to uphold these values. Gerald stepped backward, bumping into an investor who looked at him with disgust. I'm sorry, he stammered. I didn't know if I had known who you were. That's exactly the problem, Michael interrupted. You should have treated me well without needing to know who I was. A journalist raised his hand. Mr. Turner, does the hotel plan to take any action against the employee responsible? Michael looked at his father. William Turner smiled. It was the smile of a shark. Actually, William said, as the new majority owners, our first administrative decision has already been made. Gerald swallowed hard. Mr. Gerald Whitmore is officially terminated for cause: discrimination, abuse of power, and filing a false report. The legal department will be in contact to discuss the legal implications. The entire lobby held its breath, and then, as if someone had flipped a switch, the murmurs exploded. Natalie watched Gerald being surrounded by journalists asking questions he couldn't answer. She saw executives who had laughed with him back away as if he had a contagious disease. She saw Brittany, the blonde receptionist who had gone mute when Michael arrived, hide a smile behind her hand. It was justice. It was karma. It was absolutely satisfying. But when Natalie looked at Michael on stage, surrounded by applause and camera flashes, something inside her tightened. He was a billionaire, heir to an empire, owner of half the cattle in the country, and she was her. An employee making $15 an hour who talked to herself when she got nervous. "What are you doing here?" she whispered to herself. "Did you really think this was going to work? That the fairy tale was real?" Michael stepped down from the stage and started walking toward her. Natalie felt panic rise. "No," she murmured, taking a step backward. "No, no." She turned and started walking toward the exit. "Natalie!" Michael's voice called behind her. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop, because if she stopped, she would have to face the truth. That she had fallen in love with a fantasy, and reality was too big to fit into her life. She walked through the revolving doors and out into the cold Montana night. And this time, it was Michael who was left behind. Gerald Whitmore never ran so fast in his life. Natalie saw everything from the parking lot, through the hotel's glass doors, while trying to find her car keys with trembling hands. The former manager crossed the lobby like a man being chased by bees, dodging journalists, tripping over a wheeled suitcase, and almost knocking over the decorative plant he loved so much. "Mr. Whitmore," a reporter shouted, running after him. "A statement about the accusations." "Mr. Whitmore," another called. "Is it true that you had a billionaire heir arrested?" Gerald didn't respond. He just kept running toward the side exit, his impeccable suit now wrinkled, his slicked back hair completely disheveled, and his dignity trailing behind him like breadcrumbs. Natalie let out an involuntary laugh. "This is awful," she said to herself, searching for the keys in her purse. "I shouldn't be laughing. It's mean to laugh at other people's suffering." Gerald tripped on a curb and almost fell face first onto the asphalt. Okay, maybe a little laughter is acceptable. She finally found the keys. They were in her coat pocket, obviously, the last place she looked, and was about to unlock the car when she heard quick footsteps behind her. "Natalie, wait." "Michael." She closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath, before turning around. He was standing a few feet away, the expensive suit contrasting absurdly with the poorly lit parking lot. There was genuine concern in his eyes, and something more, something that looked like desperation. "Why did you run out?" he asked, breathless. "I didn't run. I walked. Fast. There's a difference." "Natalie, fine, I ran. Happy?" "No, not happy at all." He took a step toward her. "What happened? I thought you wanted to see Gerald get fired." "And I did. It was wonderful. 5 stars, would recommend to everyone." "Then why are you running away?" The word hit her like a slap. Running away. That was exactly what she was doing. "Because I don't belong in this world," she said finally, her voice coming out smaller than intended. "Your world. The world of Italian suits and announcements to journalists and buying hotels like buying breakfast." "Natalie, I'm a hotel employee, Michael. A former employee, probably, because I'm pretty sure I broke into the manager's office and yelled at him a few hours ago, which is usually grounds for termination." She gestured frantically. "I make $15 an hour. I live in an apartment where the heater works every other day. My car makes noises that don't exist in any manual." "I don't care about any of that." "But I care." The shout echoed through the empty parking lot. Michael was silent. "I care," Natalie repeated, quieter now, her voice breaking. "Because during this week I thought I had found someone who understood me, someone real, someone who woke up at 4:30 to take care of animals and drank coffee standing up because he didn't have time to sit down. I am that person. You're a billionaire in disguise. I'm both. You can't be both." "Why not?" Natalie opened her mouth to respond and realized she didn't have a good answer. The cold Montana wind blew between them, making her hair fly in every direction. She probably looked like a crazy person. A red-eyed crazy person having an existential crisis in a parking lot. "You lied to me," she said, returning to the central point. "Every day, every conversation, every moment, you knew the truth and chose to hide it." "I know. And now I don't know what was real anymore." Michael took another step. Now they were less than 3 feet apart. "I'll tell you what was real," he said, his voice firm. "It was real when I laughed at your absurd theories about me being a secret astronaut. It was real when you brought me a gas station sandwich because you thought I was starving. It was real when you stood up to your boss, the boss who could fire you, just to defend me." Natalie's eyes began to sting. "That's not fair." "What's not fair?" "You being handsome and making emotional speeches." "Pick one." Michael almost smiled. "I pick you." "That doesn't make grammatical sense." "It does to me." Behind them, the hotel door opened and a group of journalists came out, clearly looking for more gossip. One of them spotted Michael and started approaching. "Mr. Turner, one more question." Michael sighed. "I need to go back inside," he said to Natalie. "My father is waiting. There are more announcements to make." "Then go." "But this conversation isn't over." "Michael." "Tomorrow," he said, holding her gaze. "Tomorrow morning I'm going to find you, and we're going to talk for real. No journalists, no billionaire fathers, no former managers being humiliated. Just the two of us." "What if I don't want to talk?" "Then I'll wait until you do." "What if I never want to?" "Natalie," Michael said, and there was something in his voice that made her stop. "You ran after me in a parking lot in high heels when I was nobody. Do you really think I wouldn't do the same for you?" The journalists were getting close. Michael turned and walked back to the hotel, leaving Natalie standing alone with her heart in pieces and her mind in chaos. She got in the car, started the engine, and sat there, staring at the steering wheel, unable to drive. "You're an idiot," she said to the rearview mirror. "A complete and absolute idiot." The reflection didn't disagree. Her phone beeped. A message from Debbie. "Gerald left crying. This is officially the best day of my life. Are you okay?" Natalie looked at the message, looked at the hotel, looked at her own hands, still shaking, and then typed back, "Don't know. Ask me tomorrow." She pulled out of the parking lot slowly, the headlights illuminating the dark Montana road. In the rearview mirror, the Grand Summit Hotel grew smaller and smaller, and somewhere in there, a man in an Italian suit was thinking about her. The problem was that Natalie didn't know if that was good or terrible. Probably both. Natalie didn't sleep that night. She stayed curled up on the couch of her apartment, under a blanket that had more holes than fabric, staring at the ceiling and having imaginary conversations with a man who wasn't there. "You lied to me," she said to the ceiling at 2 a.m. "But I understand why," she answered herself at 3:15. "That doesn't change the fact that you lied," she argued at 4:47. "But he came back for you," an irritatingly rational voice whispered at 5:12. "He ran after you in the parking lot, in an Italian suit. That has to count for something." At 6 a.m, Natalie gave up on sleeping and went to make coffee. At 6:15, she realized she was out of coffee. At 6:17, she started crying over the empty coffee maker. "Are you crying about coffee or a billionaire?" she asked her own reflection in the window. The reflection didn't answer, but looked equally confused. The sun was rising over Montana when someone knocked on the door. Natalie froze, the empty mug still in her hand. "Knock, knock, knock." "I'm not home," she said quietly. "Natalie, I know you're in there. Your car is out front." Michael's voice. Of course it was Michael's voice. Who else would it be at 6:30 in the morning? "My car was stolen," she tried. "I'm in another state, Wyoming, very far. Come back another day." "Wyoming is 4 hours from here." "I drive very fast." "Natalie." "Go away, Michael." Silence from the other side. For a moment she thought he had left. And then his voice came again, softer now. "I'm going to wait out here until you're ready to talk. Take all the time you need." "What if I'm never ready? Then I'll build a house in this hallway. The neighbors will have to get used to it." Natalie made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "That's harassment. That's romantic persistence." "It's the same thing with different words. Technically, no. One gets you jail time. The other becomes a movie." She rested her forehead against the door, feeling the cold of the wood against her skin. On the other side, she could almost feel his presence. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "Because I like you. You like everyone, you're pleasant, it's annoying. I don't like everyone, I tolerate most people." A pause. "You I actually like." "Why?" "I'm neurotic, I talk to myself. I have a car that could explode at any moment. I make $15 an hour. $14.50 actually, I checked. That's even worse." "Natalie," his voice became serious. "Open the door, please." She looked down. She was wearing flannel pajamas with sheep print. Her hair was a bird's nest. She probably had dark circles down to her chin. "I look terrible," she said. "I don't care. My pajamas have sheep on them. I like sheep, they're family." "That doesn't make sense. My family raises cattle. Sheep are distant cousins. Open the door." Natalie opened the door. Michael was standing in the hallway, but not in a suit. He was wearing jeans, a plaid flannel shirt, and the boots. The famous dirty boots that had started all of this. "You're wearing boots," she said, surprised. "They're my favorites. They have mud on them. They always do. You're a billionaire. So what?" She opened her mouth to respond and found no words. Michael extended his hand. "Come with me." "Where?" "You'll see. This sounds like the beginning of a horror movie. Or a romance. Sometimes it's the same thing." But she took his hand. They drove for 40 minutes in silence. The red pickup truck, the same old dusty pickup, cut through rural roads until they reached a place Natalie had never seen. A farm at the foot of the mountains, with white fences, a red barn, and fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. The morning sun painted everything in shades of gold. "What is this?" she asked, getting out of the car. "The first farm hotel," Michael said. "Still under construction, but it's going to be here." Natalie looked around, absorbing the landscape. "It's beautiful." "I know," he turned to her, "and I want you to be part of it." Her heart raced. "Michael? Let me finish." He took a deep breath. "I know I lied to you. I know I hid who I was, and I know you have every right to be furious, hurt, and distrustful. I'm all three things, simultaneously. It's exhausting, I imagine." He took a step toward her. "But I need you to understand something. Throughout my entire life, people treated me according to my last name. They flattered me, used me, saw me as an opportunity. And when I took away the last name, when I showed up just as Michael, the guy with the dirty boots, you were the only one who ran after me. Technically, it was more stumbling than running." "Natalie, sorry. Continue." Michael held her hands. "You saw me when I was invisible. You fought for me when you had nothing to gain. You stood up to your boss, risked your job, drove to a roadside inn in the middle of the night just to make sure I was okay." Natalie's eyes began to sting. "I liked you," she whispered. "The simple farmer. The Michael who woke up at 4:30 and drank coffee standing up. That Michael still exists, but now he comes with billions of dollars attached. The money doesn't change who I am. It changes the way the world sees me." A tear escaped. "People are going to look at me and think I'm with you for the money. The poor girl who hooked the air. The gold digger in high heels who ran after the billionaire." "So what?" "What do you mean, so what?" "So what if that's what people think?" Michael held her face with both hands. "I know the truth. You know the truth. The rest is just noise." Natalie sniffled. "That was very profound for a farmer. I read books sometimes, between one cow and another." She laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." "I know," he smiled, "but you like me anyway." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." They stood in silence for a moment, holding hands in the middle of the field, with the sun rising on the horizon and the future opening before them like an endless road. "So what now?" Natalie finally asked. "Now you choose," Michael said. "You can go back to your normal life. Forget all of this. Pretend you never met a farmer in dirty boots in a hotel lobby. I'll understand. Or you can take a risk. Give this a chance. Give us a chance. See where this road leads. What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" Natalie looked at him, at the green eyes she knew so well now, at the smile that made her heart race, at the hands that held hers as if she were precious. "I must be completely crazy," she murmured to herself. "This is going to go wrong in 1,000 different ways. He's a billionaire. I make $14.50 an hour. The difference in net worth is astronomical, literally astronomical, like bigger than the GDP of some countries." "You're talking to yourself again," Michael observed. "I know. This is how I process important decisions." "And what's the decision?" Natalie took a deep breath, looked at the farm, looked at Michael, looked at her own hands, still intertwined with his. "The decision," she said slowly, "is that I'm an idiot. A complete and absolute idiot who's going to risk everything for a man she met 2 weeks ago and who lied to her for most of that time." Michael swallowed hard. "Is that a yes?" "That's a let's see what happens," which is basically a yes with reservations. The smile that spread across Michael's face was so big it seemed to take up the entire state of Montana. "I'll accept a let's see what happens." "Great, because that's all I have to offer right now." He pulled her into a hug. And there, in the middle of an open field, with the sun rising and the future uncertain, Natalie finally allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could be real. 6 months later, the first Turner Country Lodge was inaugurated on a May afternoon, under a perfect blue sky and the curious eyes of 300 guests. Natalie was there, not as a guest, but as general manager. Yes, general manager. The same woman who used to make $14.50 an hour now commanded a team of 40 people and had an office with a view of the mountains. "I still can't believe this is my life," she said to Debbie, who had been hired as reception supervisor. "I can't believe it either," Debbie replied, adjusting her new badge, "especially the part where you're dating the owner and nobody can fire me for gossiping." "You can still be fired for gossiping, but it would be weird. Conflict of interest." "That's not how conflict of interest works." "Let me dream." The inauguration ceremony took place in the main field, with guests seated in rustic wooden chairs and the herd grazing peacefully in the background. William Turner gave a speech about tradition and innovation. The mayor of Bozeman gave a speech about tourism and the local economy. A senator gave a speech about something nobody heard because it was too long. And then Michael stepped onto the stage. "I'll be brief," he said, drawing applause just for that. "6 months ago, I walked into a hotel with dirty boots and was kicked out like an intruder. Today, I'm inaugurating my own hotel, where nobody will be judged by what they wear or what they appear to have." More applause. "But this place wouldn't exist without one specific person. Someone who taught me the true meaning of courage, kindness, and talking to yourself at inappropriate moments." Laughter in the audience. Natalie, sitting in the front row, felt her face catch fire. "Natalie," Michael said, looking directly at her, "can you come up here?" Her heart stopped. "What?" she whispered. Debbie pushed her. "Go already." Natalie stood up on trembling legs and walked to the stage, aware that 300 people were looking at her. "What are you doing?" she hissed when she got close. "Something I should have done a long time ago." And then Michael knelt down. The world went into slow motion. Natalie saw his hand go to his pocket, saw the velvet box appear, saw the ring gleaming under the Montana sun. "No," she said automatically. Michael froze. "No? I mean, not no." She was shaking. "Not as in what's happening. Not as in is this real? Not as in." "Natalie," Michael interrupted gently, "I haven't asked the question yet." "Oh, true, continue. Sorry, I'll be quiet now. You're never quiet." "I know, but I'm going to try. For 30 seconds. Start." Michael laughed and 300 people laughed with him. "Natalie Foster," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, "you are the most stubborn, most clumsy, most incredibly brave woman I've ever met. You saw me when I was invisible. You defended me when I couldn't defend myself. And you loved me before you knew I had anything to offer." Tears began streaming down her face. "I don't want to spend another day without you. Not the 4:30 mornings. Not the standing-up coffees. Not the random monologues about nothing in particular." "They're not about nothing," she protested, sniffling. "They're about everything. External verbal processing." "I love your external verbal processing." "Nobody loves that." "I do." Michael opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, perfect. "Natalie Foster, will you marry me?" The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds, which to Natalie felt like 4 hours. "I should think about this," she said to herself, not realizing the microphone was picking up every word. "I mean, this is an important decision. For life, marriage, to a billionaire. People are going to talk. My mom is going to freak out. I'm going to have to wear a white dress. I look terrible in white. Maybe ivory? Is ivory acceptable?" "Natalie," Michael said, still kneeling, still smiling. Sorry, focus. The question, yes or no? She looked at him. At the man in dirty boots who had turned her world upside down, at the billionaire farmer who laughed at her bad jokes, at the love of her life kneeling before her with a ring and a hope. Yes, she said. And then louder. Yes. The field exploded in applause. Michael stood up and kissed her. And Natalie forgot that 300 people were watching. Forgot that she probably looked terrible from crying so much. Forgot everything except that moment. That man. That future opening before them, like the endless fields of Montana. Later that night, when the guests had left and the stars shone over the first Turner Country Lodge, Natalie and Michael sat on the porch of the main house, holding hands, looking at the horizon. I still can't believe this is real, she said quietly. The hotel or the engagement? Both. Everything. My entire life 6 months ago versus now. Michael squeezed her hand. Any regrets? About running after a stranger in dirty boots in a parking lot? She pretended to think. A little. Those heels were very expensive. He laughed. I'll buy you new heels. You don't need to buy me anything. I know, but I want to. Natalie nestled against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, the solidity of something real and true. Hey, Michael? Yes? Thank you. For what? For walking into that hotel. With those boots. On that day. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you for running after me. Stumbling after me. Better. The silence that followed was comfortable. The kind of silence that only exists between people who don't need words to understand each other. And somewhere in the distance, on the lands of what would one day be the largest farm hotel complex in the country, a cow mooed in approval of it all. Appearances can hide extraordinary truths, and a simple act of kindness can open doors that money could never buy. If you felt that too, leave in the comments what rating you'd give this story. And if you believe everyone needs to learn not to judge others by appearances, subscribe. Turn on notifications and share this story with someone special.